Pleasantville. Last week, we discussed a few ways you can help your body physically in 2022. This week, I want to touch on mental health. As we said, the impacts of nutrition, sleep, and movement play a big part in how you feel and your mood. But what can we do to be mindful about what we're doing emotionally, and what deliberate actions can we take this year to improve the quality of the relationship we have with ourselves and the relationships we have with others? In a bit, we're going to speak to my friend Maggie O'Connor, a Pleasantville resident who's a therapist. Before that, though, I want to share a little of my personal journey with mental health. I believe that the only way that we can reduce the stigma of mental health issues and mental illness is by being vulnerable and sharing personal experiences. So I'm going to tell you a little of mine. My official diagnosis is major depressive disorder and generalized anxiety disorder. A mouthful, I know. I was officially diagnosed at 19, but it started way before that. These illnesses happen to run very strongly in my family. It has affected multiple generations. And what I'd like people to understand about what I have is that it is a chronic illness. It's one of the mysteries of my brain. As of now, there's no cure. However, there have been amazing discoveries since my diagnosis 30 years ago to help manage my illness. You may be thinking, no way she has depression. She always looks happy. It's true. I do look happy. I am happy. And I'm so grateful to be on this current emotional upswing, which is today. But I have no idea when that cloud of depression or the debilitating anxiety will rear its head again. And the reality is you will probably never see it. You won't see me curled in a ball, unable to move, when I'm paralyzed and all the nerves in my body are screaming and firing. It's hidden and it's private and it's reserved for the closest friends and family who are on this journey with me. And I'm so grateful I have them. But luckily, these moments are few and far between now because I have treatments and skills that help me. My illness is managed. Having clinical depression is not the same as feeling depressed. And feeling depressed is a symptom. Having an anxiety disorder is not the same as feeling anxious, but feeling anxious is a symptom. The difference is that the illness is permanent. The symptoms are temporary, but they feel the same. So if you can relate to any of this, or you care about someone who can relate to this, let them know that they can feel relief. However, it takes time and practice and experimentation to find what works for you. And then you have to maintain it. It's like working out. You can't immediately have the body you want just because you tell yourself you want it. You have to do all the steps that it takes to get there. And then if you want to maintain your progress, you have to be mindful about slipping back into old patterns. It is a process. So, make some mental health resolutions for 2022. Setting resolutions can bring a sense of hope in the coming year. It can also be disappointing. So set goals that are reasonable and achievable, and don't set yourself up for failure. The tips that work for me help increase my mood, especially during the pandemic and the gloomy weather. So, don't isolate yourself. Surround yourself with positive people and experiences. You may have to force yourself. Maybe you want to use the pandemic as an excuse to avoid doing this, or that you're sick of Zoom. But come on, you're smarter than that. There's always a way to get out of the house and just wave at a neighbor. The other thing you should do is reflect on your accomplishments, big ones from last year, and also little ones every single day. This is something you can do with your family, no matter how small. I recommend keeping a journal so you can look back at all of the little things that you were able to accomplish. And sometimes, for me, it's as simple as getting out of bed. The other thing you can do is engage in distractions. You know how you do that with a baby? It's the same thing with adults. If you're mindful of your surroundings and you look for things that bring you joy, you can find joy. Meditate, breathe, sing. Also, be really careful about falling into self-medicating patterns. You don't need to add that to your plate. Another thing you need to do is have something to look forward to. Make a plan. Something with friends, with family that you can think about in your future or focus on when you're feeling bad. I will list some upcoming Village offerings for you on our social media platforms. Taking good care of yourself does take effort, and if you're having a hard time doing any of these things, please reach out to someone. I reached out to my friend Maggie when I was really struggling last week. She also agreed to check in with us. Check it out. What's up, Pleasantville? Today we get to meet with my very good friend, Maggie O'Connor, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist and a certified emotionally focused therapist. And she's going to help us talk a little bit about mental health in 2022. Hi, Maggie.
Hello.
Thanks for coming.
It's a pleasure to be here.
So, your practice is in Scarsdale, but you are a local Pleasantville resident and single mom, and actually you're remote right now, working remotely.
Working remotely, yeah, from home in Pleasantville. This has been a very interesting time. I've been very transparent with all of my clients and everybody that I'm in this with everybody and trying to figure it out, you know. Right. And that's not something therapists always do, but I think we've, as therapists, have had to really adjust as well how we do this work, you know, to be more authentic in how we practice.
I mean, you are a person, so you are, and you are going through life along with the rest of us. Mm-hmm. So we talked a little before about 2022 and mental health, and I kind of wanted to talk about, like, what are you noticing with your clients this year in particular?
Yeah, that's a great question. Because our practice, my practice has 3 other therapists in it, 3 other wonderful therapists. And even when we are working with somebody individually, we're seeing them through the lens of relationship. The practice focuses on relationships. So while we do couples and families, also when you come in individually, we're seeing all of those systems that are attached to you, right? Mm-hmm. So my focus and real interest in this pandemic has been what happens with our connections with each other, and how have they changed when we were first quarantined and isolated from other people, and then in this gradual return to something that looks more normal and these kind of setbacks, and how all of this has affected relationships and connections and just our capacity, you know, for stress.
Yeah. Well, I think it's interesting too that we have, like you said, that we think we're getting out of it, and then all of a sudden we're back isolating and masking and everything again. And you must see a toll on the relationships that kind of survived the first half, and then, or half, we don't even know what half point is. Right. So what do you recommend for your clients or for regarding their relationships? What, like, are there special tricks, tips, things that we can do regarding that? One of the things, the guy that we spoke to last week, who is a chiropractic coach, he talked about when you want to make a new goal or have a new habit, you line it up with something else. So brushing your teeth, you do that every day. So in conjunction with brushing your teeth, you say, okay, I'm going to meditate for 10 minutes. Have you ever thought about like that with relationships, and is that a good trick? Like, you're having dinner, and so immediately after dinner we play a game together, or I don't know, like how can you help us actually with hardcore like ideas and tips?
I think that's a great question, and I want to just back it up a little bit and talk a little bit about, I think at first what happened when we were isolated and quarantined, I think what happened was a lot of people white-knuckled it, just batten down the hatches. We might be all dead in a month. Nobody knew what was going to happen. It was a really scary time, you know? And so I think a lot of people were either putting their problems on hold or, kind of continuing to do whatever they did, to manage the relationship. But we were really distracted, and rightly so, with taking care of our families, taking care of ourselves, taking care of each other. This looked really different for people who maybe lived alone versus people who had a house full of people. And there were challenges to both. And I think that what ended up happening was, if a lot of people white-knuckled, kind of batten down the hatches on the relationship as well. Like, how do I start talking about the problems that have always been there when I'm stuck in the house 24/7 with the person that I see as the problem? right? And the truth is, you're not the problem, you're not the problem. This negative cycle you get into with each other is really the problem. And so we're wanting to, when you come to therapy with us, that's what we're really looking at. It's such a relief to know that you are not the problem, right? And neither is your partner, really. It's something in the interaction between the two of you. Right. Or your child, right? And when we do family therapy and looking at those cycles between kids and parents, right? And how that works. It sounds complex, but it really is quite simple when you get down to that level. But I will say that there has been this real surge in incoming therapy clients. If anybody out there has been looking for a therapist, you know the wait lists are so long. You know, we've been managing a lot in our practice because we have several people. You know, you make the one phone call, and you know there might be one of 4 that could help. But you know, if you're a solo practitioner, you can't even return those calls. So it's been very hard on therapists, it's been very hard on people who need therapists, and I think that with the reopening of some things, people have a little more space to breathe and get out of the house and know it's not going to kill you, you know, to go somewhere else, literally. I think that has opened up some space for people to start talking about what has been bothering them and what maybe came really to a head in the quarantine part of it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It made me think about actually the people that are in a crisis, or the couples or the families that are in crisis, and if they can't reach a therapist, what do they do?
That's the question. That's the $50 million question, right? If you're really in crisis, what do you do? And if we're talking about a mental health crisis, you call 911. Right. You go to the emergency room. I'm sorry, but if you really think you're going to hurt yourself or somebody else, you should really get help immediately and figure the rest out later. Right. If you think, I'd say maybe this is a good opportunity to say, if you think that you're having a psychiatric issue, as in I'm biochemically depressed, I biochemically have such anxiety, I'm having a hard time functioning, you're not alone. You really need to get some help immediately. And psychiatry is the other thing that is really overloaded. But what you can do if you're feeling like you're having that kind of issue is you can call your primary care physician. Your primary care physician is trained to assess how severe it is, and very often will prescribe some antidepressants or anti-anxiety meds if it's warranted, and while you're waiting to get somebody to look at you more closely, which, you know, if you're saying the psychiatrist has a 3-month wait, so they treat you for 3 months, and then you know, you get into a psychiatrist and everybody's happy.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay.
You asked me about what couples could do to kind of take care of themselves and take care of the relationship, you know, just sort of some positives, you know. And this has been a really great opportunity for a lot of couples. I mean, the pandemic has been an amplifier, right, for whatever was there already. So people who had underlying problems anyway saw them come to a head, you know, and really had to make decisions about whether they were going to address them or ignore them, right? And then there are some couples that really found that they actually liked each other, and their work and other commitments outside the home were really interfering with the time they got to spend together. And I know that's not what we're really here to talk about, but I just want to recognize that folks out there who kind of said, wow, I actually like my family. Maybe I don't want to go back to an 80-hour work week. Maybe, you know, I don't, and we're seeing a lot of that. Maybe I don't want to have my kid in practices, you know, 5 days a week, you know, 365. So I want to recognize that. But what I want to say about taking care of each other starts with taking care of yourself, right? So when you're talking about taking care of yourself, particularly for women, and listen, traditional gender roles and expectations really hurt both men and women in so very many ways, and that's a different discussion. You and I could have some time.
I love it.
But in this case, you know, particularly for women, we've been really discouraged from taking care of ourselves, pursuing our own interests. We're really encouraged to take care of everybody else's interests, everybody else's stuff, you know, and that ends up really hurting everybody, because who is taking care of everybody? Right. And if this body is not doing well, nobody else is doing as well as they could be.
It really is the adage of the putting your own airplane mask on first before you help everybody else.
Amen. I mean, that is so true. It's cliche for a reason.
Right, it's cliche and we all know it,
right.
And yet we still don't necessarily do it.
Yes.
But maybe that's one of the benefits of the pandemic, is that it really drew it to a head of like, okay, I have to do something,
right.
Otherwise I'm crumbling.
Which is interesting, because we could talk about the parallel of put on your own mask.
Yeah.
Put on your mask to take care of everybody else.
Truly.
That's
oh, whoa.
Ooh, light bulb. See what happens in What's Up Pleasantville? Right? This is what we get to do, okay?
You are so lucky, Pleasantville. You're so lucky. Okay, so I know one of the things that we do for my family, we do a lot of DBT. And one of the things that we talk about, especially in interpersonal relationships and communicating, is validation. And I think for us, that's a big trick of like, even though I don't understand what you're personally going through, I understand what it feels like to be going through something that's difficult.
Right.
And then just being there for them. I think it's really important that we try to do that for each other, even for our friends or for the people we work with, or just all of our relationship, or honestly, even road rage. I mean, we are all going through something right now.
Everybody is going through something, so we should all be kind, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's, if you want to talk about tips and tricks, it's stuff like that, right? But I think that appreciation is a huge, if you want to talk about tips and tricks, I'm not talking about a shortcut to solve problems that go deeper. I'm just talking about on the day-to-day.
Get through the day.
Yeah, because when you're appreciating, right, you're more likely to be appreciated.
Right.
We can get really defensive about feeling underappreciated, and then we don't want to give appreciation. So we sort of, again, we talk about these negative cycles that run in between people. If we can talk about appreciating the other person, if we can talk about saying, I can see you for your experience, and it doesn't have to be mine, like you just described, that goes pretty far. The thing that ends up happening, though, is, and we talk about this in EFT a lot, in emotionally focused therapy, is that there's sometimes blocks to those kinds of tricks. Look, it sounds so simple, but it's not always easy, right? If I see you making coffee for me and I don't want to say thank you, right? There's a block, there's something going on there. And that's when you call a therapist and say, I can't tell my partner thank you for making coffee. Something's up, They folded all the laundry, and I was like, yeah, but you didn't do those 12 other things, the house is a mess when I come home from my 2-hour commute. I just, it's sort of these things that that we want to pay attention to, how we're treating each other, how we're treating, and it starts with how we're treating ourselves. You're much more likely to take care of the other person if you feel taken care of. And so part of that is how you take care of yourself, doing your meditation and your yoga or your running or your Peloton or whatever the thing is that you do. It can be reading time, it can be quiet time, it can be anything, just seeing friends, which we can do more safely now. Following all the guidelines, of course. I don't want to get in trouble. But how we take care of each other from there, when I know that you need something or you want something, I want to give that to you because
you care about you.
I care about you, but also my cup is full enough that I have it to give to you. And this goes back to what we were saying earlier about how coming back out of this pandemic, we're really thinking about how we spend our time, and how we spend our energy. These are resources we don't really get back, So we've got to think about how full our cup is and how we take care of ourselves to take care of each other, and really be honest about that. It's not like, yes, I can, and therefore I should. It's like, really, is it good for you right now? And if not, then how do you fill your cup before you go trying to fill other people's?
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome.
That's awesome. I want to thank you for actually being there for me last week. I had a really rough week last week, personally, and Maggie, my dear friend Maggie, came over and just held me while I cried, and I think that's something that we should know, that you got to reach out sometimes to people that you trust. And
Joanna, you know it's my privilege and my pleasure to take care of you in your moments, and you take care of me in times as well, as we know.
Thank you.
But you know, you're saying something really important, because what did I really do, right? Like, I came over and I sat with you. Yeah. And this is something that, you know, people really don't always recognize unless they've experienced just needing another person there. Sometimes I just need you there. You don't need to solve the problem. You can't solve the pandemic, but you can sit with me in the stress of it. Right? You can't solve that I've lost people, but you can sit with me. You know, and someone many, many years ago said to me, you know, do you want me to come sit with you? And I thought, what is she talking about? Right? Yeah. But she did come. And she sat, and it was like, it makes all the difference in the world. We are not built to live in isolation. And this pandemic has really challenged some very primitive instincts that we have, right? And to sit with each other and to be with each other. It used to be on Zoom. Now it can be on a porch. You know, it can be inside and masked. You can have people in your circle of trust. And I would say, if we're talking about survival techniques, having that circle of trust, having those couple of families or people that you trust to test, trust to tell, you know, if there's any kind of concern at all.
Sniffle nose.
Right? Like I just had a headache the other day, and I'm vaccinated, I'm not really sure. You know, just people that you trust so that you can sit with people. We need that. It's not a luxury. We need to feel the other person there in the dark. Right? And so I couldn't solve your problem. Right? But it was immensely helpful to be there with each other.
I think too, like for me, to be proud of myself for actually asking, because I'm really independent and strong and, you know, come off put together. But, you know,
but that doesn't happen in a vacuum.
It doesn't, and it also doesn't happen all the time. And sometimes, you know, you realize that, I don't know, I'm proud of myself for actually reaching out and saying, yes, I do need you to come.
Yeah, and you should be proud of yourself, girl.
Because it's not.
That takes courage.
It took a long time for you to get to that point to be able to say that.
Yeah. Well, you did it beautifully, and you should be so proud of yourself.
And it worked.
Yeah, and it worked.
I did. I cried, and I felt better. It was very cathartic.
In all sincerity, but you know, clinically, let's say I understand that people have very good reasons for not asking for help. You know, we're set up in childhood, you know, way before we even remember sometimes.
You're fine.
Right? Yeah, like it's fine because the adults need us to be fine. Look, okay? I understand clinically. But as a person, you know, when someone calls and says, oh, I just went through this thing, and I say, why didn't you call me? P.S. Do you not know what I do? Okay, like I might have more help for you, you know. But we all have a hard time asking for help, and there is something in that sort of primitive brain about, you know, will the tribe accept me if I'm asking for help? I need to give benefit to the tribe, right? So it's real. That's really old, you know, survival brain stuff. But you know, more to the point that we're talking about, you know, how we're set up to ask for help, to expect a response when I reach out in the dark. You know, will I feel your hand there? Will it be empty? You know, and that's worse. Knowing that there's no one there is worse than not trying at all. You know, until your body, you know, gets full up of, you know, with the isolation. So I really encourage everybody out there to really ask for help. Call somebody. There is somebody waiting for your call. You know, and if you realize you don't have anybody, so that's the other thing that has come to bear from this pandemic, is that the people that are around you might not be great connections for you. And you didn't notice because you were so busy with your life. And so you come into isolation with this group of people. Maybe they're your family, maybe, you know, maybe they're other people you live with or close to, and you realize, I can't have these conversations. It's not safe to ask them for help. It's not safe to ask them for support, you know? And if you really find yourself alone like that, that's a good time to call a therapist. You know, tips and tricks, it's a good time to look for a meetup. It's a good time to develop an interest that you might have always had that might include other people.
Like ARC stages?
Like ARC stages. It's a wonderful opportunity here in Pleasantville.
It is.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, and just any of the offerings out here.
Yeah, we have tons of resources for things to do.
Right, and we're in Westchester, safely in Westchester, right? I mean, there's hiking trails everywhere. There's all kinds of like artistic, kind of music, all kinds of stuff that you can do with your free time and do with other people now safely,
right.
And everybody's pretty sensitive here. We're very fortunate for the area that we live in that most people here are pretty safe about, how they interact with each other in public.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think we're good. Like we've got a good base of information, and I really appreciate you coming down and talking to all the people from Pleasantville that are watching What's Up Pleasantville today.
It has been my privilege and an honor. Thank you, Joanna.
It's an honor to be friends with you, Maggie.
Love you, girl.
Love you too. All right, Pleasantville. See you soon. Bye. There are some local resources for you that are coming up, sponsored by Break the Hold, that are happening for parents at the schools and additional courses for residents. But remember, we are all going through the same profound time. The smiling faces you may see on social media don't reflect the entire truth. We all need kindness to ourselves and to others, even the guy who cut you off in traffic. Remember, we're here for you, and PCTV is your community voice.